Hi, Michelle. I'm here with
Hi.
Michelle Elder, and we are both transformational coaches. And we the one thing I really have liked about Michelle in watching some of her videos is the fact that she has been so vulnerable in her past few sharings that she has done. And I don't see too much of that with coaches really being vulnerable in the self-help personal development field. So I really resonated with you in that
Thank
aspect.
you.
It's just so important. It's so important because I feel like transformation happens when we get vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you
That is key. Yeah, that's key.
I also
Mm-hmm.
feel, and let you tell me if you agree with this or not, that it's the one place where we resist the most.
Yeah, I do find that though, if we're not vulnerable, it's hard to really feel true love. Like, and I'm not even talking about romantic love, but with others, like
Mm-hmm.
that, I think we connect more with our vulnerability. And it's amazing how you just take one deeper moment with somebody and then you feel like, oh, this person gets me. It's like we connect with each other and know we're not alone. So that's what I love about vulnerability, right? Is that we are not alone
Yeah,
in our lives. Because
absolutely.
that's what we need to hear all the time. No matter how much we have our stuff together, we need to hear it all the time. At
Right.
least that's my case, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
so if I were to ask you what it looks like for you, what would you say that is?
I think vulnerability is it's a state of getting real. And after my divorce, I remember I was with my ex-husband for 16 years, and I left that marriage in complete and utter shock that I didn't know myself, and I didn't know I put up with a really, really bad relationship for so long. And I'm like, how could I have done that? How could I have been in such denial? And so that was my big mission in life, is to stop living in denial and start meditating. And so my number one thing I remember at the time when I was transforming myself is like, I just had to get real. I
Mm,
had to really see myself, because I'm like, how could anyone put up with that? Like, how could someone be in a relationship or be so good at lying to yourself that I just let people walk all over me. It was so. I think what I first had to do is get really vulnerable with myself and really get real. And part of the vulnerability, as you and I both have known, going through what we've been through, is really letting those shadows out and not being ashamed of who you like, the things you feel yucky about yourself. Just let it out and love it anyway. Because I think what people do is they sit and they hide their shame, and it's them hiding their shame is what makes that dysfunction louder, right?
it's so
And
true.
so, yeah, so when we get real, and so when I sat in meditation and every day I said, I just want to know the real me. Just let me see me, because I didn't want to lie to myself anymore. Because I'm serious, me and Denial were like, I used to joke that he was my boyfriend. Like, I couldn't break up with him. It was like so bad. Yeah, so I think, and again, now that I practice vulnerability on a daily basis, and also being a nurse,
Mm,
I've been a hospice nurse for years, and truly, truly, the only thing that matters in life is love and connection, and really, that's it. At the end
hmm
of life, that's all we care about. And being a nurse, I got in with people at a level that um, most people never get to, because patients, they'll hide their stories from families, but they'll tell us nurses everything.
hmm
And so for all these years I've been a nurse, I've had the blessing of learning about people and who they truly are. And it's just so gorgeous, isn't it? When people open up like that, and health and healing happens there too. So when we get vulnerable, we heal. When we get vulnerable, we find true love. When we get vulnerable, we have deep connections with people that we never could have had. But it takes vulnerability, and that is scary.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Woo, you hit on everything. But you did. But the one thing that really stands out for me is the fact that before we can be vulnerable with anyone else, we have to be vulnerable with ourselves.
Yeah.
It starts with ourselves
Yeah.
first.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I see people in this world of self-help, personal development, spirituality going towards it with this like idea of trying to fix
Mm-hmm.
something, of trying to make
Mm-hmm.
something better or trying to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what it really is just going inward
Yeah.
and exposing, and you use the
Mm-hmm.
word shadow, exposing
Right.
the shadows. And we're always so focused on the light, but it's really about exposing the shadow with the light.
Yes.
Like really just shining a light on what we're trying to hide without
Yeah.
even knowing we're trying to hide it, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part, is like being able to go in there and look at those places within ourselves that we've
Mm-hmm.
shamed.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and then we also have to really connect with this idea of why we shamed it. Like, who told us it was wrong?
Right.
Because
Right.
nothing's really wrong, right? It's only
Right.
wrong. It's only wrong when we hide it,
Or
or
we make it wrong. We
or
judge ourselves
when we
on it.
judge it. Yes, and we deny it.
There's, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Matt Kahn. He's a spiritual teacher.
I love
I
him.
know. I love him. And one of his videos, and he's in the Northwest, so I've actually seen him. I've been to a couple of his events. He's seriously pure love. Like, he really is genuinely a loving, loving person. But he did a whole thing on
I
judgment.
think I saw it.
Have you seen that?
Well, you know what
And
I love about him is recently he really one of his talks he came out with everything that encompassed the shadow, whereas
oh,
in the past it was just about love, which is beautiful, but
hmm
he really touched on how to love the shadow,
yes, yes.
and that
Is
was
it?
just, yeah, it was
Yeah. Was it the one
beautiful.
where he says it's okay? It's
Well,
okay.
he's always saying I think
I
he's
know, but
always
I love
saying
the
that.
one like if you want to tell someone, excuse my language, to fuck off. You're like, it's okay that I felt that way. It's okay that I'm angry. It's okay that I'm ashamed. It's okay that I'm feeling scared. It's okay. It's like, again, it's that self love, the total unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
And if more people just like when they came in their moment of fury where their minds aren't working right and just say, put their hand on their heart and say, it's okay. It's okay. Because love is really the healer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, I love
yeah.
Matt Kahn. I'm glad you know.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
have witnessed even his transformation as he has taught. And so in this last talk that I saw, I really saw him be the most vulnerable
Yeah.
in that he was willing to share his personal story. And I
Uh-huh.
don't know if you saw that one.
No.
He really went deep into his like his childhood, where all of our shadows are birthed, right? Um,
Right.
and I could see the audience responding in a way where it finally, everything he taught up until that point, it's like all the dots connected.
Uh-huh.
It's like everything came together because he was willing to go to that place.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and for some reason we're in a society where being strong and being resilient is like, what
Mm-hmm.
we all want to be, this perfectionism. I
Mm-hmm.
especially see it in the nursing world. It's like if we're not perfect, we're bad. Like
Mm-hmm.
we are bad. It's like in a culture,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you don't ever feel very loving when you're in that space because you feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. You're like, there's the self love is kind of shot when we
Yeah.
have these expectations. Yeah, I don't know why I went on that tangent, but
Yeah,
just
no, you're absolutely right, because we're
mhm.
ultimately what we're doing is wearing a mask.
Right,
We're not authentic.
right,
Right?
right.
So we don't feel like we're really alive. We don't feel like we're really,
Yes,
we're
yes.
really engaged in life because we're so busy trying to conform and trying to mask and pretend. So
Huh.
yeah, totally.
And I know you do a lot on relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I found was so different about my relationship with my soulmate now is how we started out vulnerable. very, very vulnerable. And I think, like most people who are looking for relationships, I think that is the hardest one because so many have been hurt
Mm-hmm.
that vulnerability in a relationship, especially at the beginning, so many of us have our guard up. It's like you almost have to be so courageous getting out there and say, I'm just going to be me and I'm going to be vulnerable and just trust. But
Totally.
it's like running outside naked, essentially.
Totally.
And that's scary, right? And so, but I think, more of us would find soulmate relationships if we were able to kind of run out there naked
Yeah.
and just be like, take me as I am. And, and also, show, it's not like your first date. You're like, okay, these are all the things wrong with me, but I'm not saying that. But I think it's important just to be as real as possible and from a very open and like unconditionally loving too with someone you meet with anybody. I think if we came across every single person in this world from a place of unconditional love, what a great world we'd be in. But a spiritual place, we are all one. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason for us not to be that. And when you fall in love with yourself, you connect that spiritual side, then it is easier to be vulnerable because everyone, we're all connected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I love that you said that because that is how I actually hopped on the path of this work, is because of
Mm-hmm.
my constant conflict with relationships. I was really resistant to this idea that, well, I don't know if I was resistant. At the time, I thought I was open, right?
Mm-hmm.
We think we're
Mm-hmm.
open
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
creating a relationship. But what I found was I kept repeating this pattern of not feeling connected in the relationship. And so I would think that the relationship was wrong. And eventually, after experiencing it a few times, and I think this is with anything in life, we have to experience it over and over again until we stop looking outward and start to hit this insight that we're responsible, that we are ultimately the common denominator in the experience, where it always comes back to us. So when
Mm-hmm.
I, finally hit that big aha moment, I still didn't get it how I was responsible, but I knew that it had to be me because I kept feeling the same feelings kept coming up over and over again, but it was with a different person. So how is that
Mm-hmm.
how is it possible, right? If it's
Right.
constantly
Right.
changing outside of me, but inside I'm still feeling the same.
Right. And that's brilliant that you did that because it truly, and that's where people can shift instantly.
Mm-hmm.
You can shift instantly when you sit there and go, I am responsible for this. And,
Mm-hmm.
we can be like sad about it, like, oh crap, I brought this on myself. Or we can be like, well, if I'm responsible, then I can easily get out of this now.
Yeah.
Because now I know it. Because I kept attracting just, men who were just way below me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they were not, they weren't, even in careers or living with roommates. They, were 10, 12 years younger than me. And I kept, why am I attracting this? But it's because I realized that was my pattern. I kept seeing it. And then I realized that was my little girl in me was picking them. And so in one meditation, I connected with her. I changed it. I raised her vibration, gave her love. And then instantly, Denise, instantly I started attracting better men and everything. So it's, just becoming aware. I mean, we
Yeah.
think we need some like years of therapy or all this amazing, miraculous things to happen to us. But it really is just an awareness and
Mm-hmm.
being vulnerable enough with yourself to say
Mm-hmm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to give yourself a lot of self-love to admit to that, right?
Totally. And I'm not going to say it was easy for me to do that because it takes practice. For me, it took practice. For me, it took asking myself questions. It took
Mm-hmm.
going in and kind of excavating the beliefs that kept me from realizing how I was disconnecting. So I thought they were disconnected. I thought my partners were disconnected, and so I always said I need a partner that I could connect with. But what was really happening is I wasn't connected to myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that anytime we want to blame or point the finger outward and we're projecting outward to what we think we need, we have to kind
Mm-hmm.
of reflect back and go, well, how is it that I'm not connected? But that took a long time because we have that wounded part of us that doesn't want
Hmm.
to see, doesn't want to take responsibility.
Yeah, because we've built up walls. Like
Yeah,
that's like a protective mechanism, and it's
totally.
something we habitually did for years. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we've done it in total autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
That thought just happened over and over and over again. And so to stop it, it's not like you're going to stop that thought like instantly,
Right.
but you can be aware of it and just eventually you go, okay, I'm not going to focus here, but I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
And this eventually does get lighter and quieter, but it is always there
And you
because
always,
you've
yeah,
science wise, the neural pathways have been indented. Like it's a
right.
permanent thing in your brains. No wonder it's hard for us to break it, but
Yeah,
it can be broken.
right.
It really can
It
be.
can be broken if you're willing to look at it. So what I
Yes.
see what people do
Yes.
is they try to stay positive a lot, right? They try, and I have
Mhm.
nothing against positivity. I think it's got its beautiful place in the self-help world, but I think people can really misunderstand it because if you're trying to if you see something not going right and you say, "Well, now I want to create this, so I'm just going to be positive." It does not
Mhm.
cancel out what you haven't looked at,
Oh,
right?
and in fact, I'm totally guilty of that because I've
Mm-hmm.
always been an optimist. And actually, what I find is, like I've actually been on Abraham Hicks. I've been on the hot seat once, and the question I asked Abraham was, "Why are my dreams so bad?" And I always wake up in a funk. And Abraham said, "It's because in my dream state, I am in non-resistance, and I'm letting things come through that I'm unwilling to let come through during the day when I'm awake." And because I'm a positive person, as much as I try, I really, really do try, Denise, to get real with myself.
Mm,
But it is my almost a natural habit to be like, oh, it's okay, what's the silver lining? And but sometimes you just need to let it come through. And so when I'm sleeping, it does come through. And so now when I wake up in a funk, I'm like, okay, looks like I did some good work last night.
that's so cool.
Something came through, but yeah, you're right. I think we can't, even though we're both happiness coaches, right? We don't sugarcoat life. Like life is not about,
No.
be happy all the time. It's just how to be okay with where you're at, no matter where that is. And that's hard.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's hard. Yesterday I had a really, really bad day. And as much as I'm in my joy and my purpose and I have a great relationship. I mean, so much good's going in my life. I had a really, really bad day. And I just sat with it because
Mm.
there's nothing else to do. And I got through it. And today I woke up and it's a much better day,
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I love is I listen to those motivational speakers and Les Brown. I love Les Brown. Have you heard of Les Brown, the speaker?
I
Yeah, of
haven't.
course.
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
Oh,
I
he's so
haven't.
good. He talks a lot about how our struggles aren't here to stay; they're here to pass.
Mm.
And there's no such thing as permanent. So it's like okay, these are going to happen when you own a business. You're going to have struggles.
Yeah.
When you're doing anything vulnerable, you're going to have struggles because
Mm-hmm.
it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you sit with it and then you get on the other end and then you feel a sense of elation that most people never get to, right?
Right.
Has that been your experience as well?
Well, I think that the struggle stays if you're resistant to the struggle. There
Oh,
are people
right.
that continue to struggle because they're resistant to what's actually happening.
That's true. That's true.
Right?
But that's why you got to be with those feelings, right?
You gotta be with them. You have to completely, fully, unconditionally accept everything that's
Yes.
going on
And
with you.
it's okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I
Mm-hmm.
have learned to just really stay with those feelings because my old self would be like, nope, nope, I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to put
Right.
on my blinders and, I'd go drink. Like I recently, really cut back
Yeah,
on
you were
drinking
saying.
because,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
because
that's a great example. Can you share that
yeah,
little
yeah,
drinking
yeah.
story?
So I drink, I was drinking every night, 2 glasses of wine for practically my whole life. I'm 44 and I started when I was 19,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a lot of years. And my ex-husband drank a lot, and I can't blame him, but I got in a habit of it. And then my sweetie now doesn't drink very much, but and he grew up with a lot of dysfunction around alcohol. His mom was an alcoholic and drug addict, and so obviously he has some issues around that. And so one day he told me he's worried about my drinking. And what's interesting though, it wasn't him, but it was my own reflection of my own shame on it
Mm-hmm.
because I knew I've been ashamed of it for a long time, where like, why do I have to have wine every night? Why is it when I have a bad day at work, I have to have my wine? Why is it that I have to celebrate something, I have to have my wine?
So
It's
you
like,
were judging. You found yourself judging
oh
yourself,
my
right?
gosh, I was so judging.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at my Heal Your Life training in Victoria, BC when it finally hit me. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And I was so ashamed. I sat after my boyfriend said I'm in my hotel room, like journaling and crying. And it's just like, it was a huge moment for me. And honestly, it really shifted me because I've committed to not drinking. I drink every once in a while, like it's more, but now it's not like an every night thing. It's not where I have the shame about it.
Yeah.
But I still, when I feel it, when there's nights, I'm like, "God, I really wish I can drink," and I don't. I call someone now and I say, I'm really struggling right now because I really, really want my wine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's hard to admit to people.
Yeah. What I really love about that story is your significant other pointed it out to you, right? So he got
Mhm.
triggered, right? Because
Mhm.
it was
Mhm.
connected to his past, and
Right.
it clearly made him feel a certain way, and he confronted you and he communicated to you in a non-judgmental manner, which
Right.
helped you to receive it better,
Right.
right? And then if
Right.
you hadn't done that work, you wouldn't have been able to receive it the way you have,
Right.
right?
Right. Exactly.
You would have taken offense to it. You would have received it as attacking, like he would have been attacking you. Would
Right.
you say
Right.
that's
But
correct?
yeah. Right. But because I've done my work and I recognize that everything is a reflection of me,
Yes.
and he did the same thing. He even said, he goes, I know this is a trigger for me. I know this is coming from a deep place, and I just have to be honest and real with you because that's the kind of relationship we have.
Yeah.
And yeah, but that's the thing, to come into a soulmate relationship really is because you both have done your work. And there's
Mm.
in 2 years of getting been together, we've been through a lot, but we don't project, we don't blame, we don't do any of that because we always say, oh, okay, what's going on in me? And then but we tell the other person, this is what I'm feeling. We go, okay, and just pure love
Yeah.
to hear each other from a pure loving place is it's just fun. I wish everybody had a relationship like this because it really
Yeah.
is it's that, if we go through life, don't you want your partner to be someone that loves you unconditionally, like unconditionally?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so for me, what I'm learning now, because I kind of touched on my past experiences and how I was always projecting outward because I felt disconnected inward. So now what I'm experiencing is very interesting when I connect with people now, whether it's friendships or, partners, either or, relationships, right? I find that once we get vulnerable with ourselves, we really have no choice but to want to be honest with other people, right? Doesn't it feel like
Yes. Oh yeah.
you do not want to sugarcoat things, so you're
Yeah.
not brushing over
Uh-huh. Yeah.
the surface.
Right.
So now what I'm finding is that whereas before I was so disconnected and shut off and defensive and I didn't really want to expose anything, um,
Mm,
now I'm the opposite, and I feel that the people that I'm connected to don't receive it very well. They're
oh, they
not
don't receive it, huh?
they're not able to receive it because it kind of makes them uncomfortable. But
Uh-huh.
what's really cool about it is that when you've done the work for yourself, you can see where the other person's coming from as opposed to wanting to judge them or make them wrong. You can just kind of see like, oh, they haven't gone there yet with themselves.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that's why they're receiving me the way they are, rather than in the past I would have taken it personally.
Right. And I think this is a really good conversation because I think what people do is when we by us really being real with ourselves and vulnerable with ourselves and unconditionally loving ourselves
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of people haven't done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come across our path, they are what it is you're pointing out to them that they don't have that yet and they want it. They want it so badly. People want to be. So I think the goal or the mission it is for me and you or people who've done the work is to just keep being real and keep holding the space that those people will do their work. But I do believe that, as far as attracting relationships, I always think the universe is helping you out all the time. Like, they'll say, okay, there's this match and this, you're not the same. And that's okay. Thank you for that. And I'm going to move on. But when you do connect with someone who, like you and I, how well we connect is because we both are very open. And when in relationships, you will find that matching partner, and it will be very, very obvious. And I tell people all the time, even though my boyfriend and I, we started out as best friends, so we didn't see each other completely, but when we were vulnerable, when we really showed ourselves, that's when we fell into like this very, very deep spiritual, blissful love. But it wasn't like butterfly love. It was more of, I'm home. Like, this is where I belong, and I want to be here the rest of my life and then some. Like, you just feel so clear. And it was because we got vulnerable. So I think most people, for us to hold that space is such a gift to the world.
Yes.
And I'm not saying we're better than them. I'm just saying, like you were saying, we've done our work. And
I will keep doing it. It's not over.
Oh yeah, it's the truth. It's an ongoing. Yeah, it's like what.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, if we have nothing else to do, we're dead. I mean, isn't that right? Like, there's always something.
Yeah, and especially like at this stage of where I'm at. I don't know if you experienced this state before you met your significant other, but it's almost like when you are coming into contact with these kinds of experiences, it's really the time to do the work, because you have to be on it. You have to be aware. You have to, it's really a test to how much am I going to commit, not to you, but to myself, right? How much am I going to commit to my truth? So if something doesn't feel right with me, am I going to express that, or am I going to hold back? Right. Am I going to kind of not ruffle the feathers because I want something to work so much, where in the past I might have done that. So now it's really just like vulnerability is really just about speaking your truth, no matter how that shows up. So one of the main reasons why we don't do it is because we're so afraid of what the other person is going to say or think about us.
Right.
And we want to try to save a relationship before we want to save the relationship we have with ourselves. Right?
Yeah, right.
We're trying so hard to save something out there, and we just automatically disconnect from ourselves because we want that. We think that's gonna make us happy.
And I remember I did this thing when this woman said, at one of my meetings in the hospice, she said, before I die, I want to ... And my thing is, before I die, I want to be in love again. Like, that was the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And and I dated a lot. And the problem, this is why I think so many of us struggle. And this is why I really, really get how hard it is. But at the same time, I'm so glad I pushed through it. I dated so many frogs that I started this belief of like, oh my God, there really isn't any good men out there, because my track record was terrible. So it's hard because, especially when we get out, when we're single for the first time, we're not ready, but we go out there because it's like a habit. It's like almost like a nervous twitch. Like everybody gets online.
It could also just be like compensating for our loneliness. Because
if you're used to a relationship and all of a sudden you're alone.
Absolutely.
I was with my ex-husband from age 19 to 35. I didn't know how to be single, like you crazy. So it was definitely a struggle, but I do know the struggle is real. And I do think, though, that by dating, you learn so much about yourself. So it's such a gift, but it is true. You have to go out there doing your work, but also go out there with an attitude of, all I need to do is keep being real to me. Keep being real to me. Keep being real to me. And what the truth is, like attracts like. Relationships, whether it's romantic or not, we grow from them.
Absolutely.
Tremendous. More than we would if we hid in our house and read books.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because I wasn't really ready after I had that epiphany of, wow, this is wild. I just keep repeating. It's like the same energy showed up in a different body for quite a while. And so when I had that epiphany, I was like, I just need to relax for a bit. Because also what happens is when you're by yourself, there's a lot of learning that happens. And I think it's so crucial and so important to have that. You need to have that to really know who you are. Because, you were saying like attracts like, but how do you know who?
I know.
If you're so enmeshed in a relationship, how do you even
Right.
know what you really are because you've been
Right.
so
Right.
entangled, right? So I think the
Right.
alone time is so important, but then you reach a point where the learning stops because now
Right.
now you really need
Yeah.
everything you've kind of gathered and learned and encompassed. You have to go out and it's like the action part, right? It's we
Yeah.
can become aware, but nothing really changes with just awareness. You have to take the action.
Yeah. And it's also such a gift you've given to yourself because I knew a lot of women who they would, get out of their marriages, whatever, and immediately get into another relationship and then another one and another one,
Mm-hmm.
another one.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized why they were doing that is because they've never been alone.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I was alone for 6.5 years. I don't know how long you've been alone, but sounds like, long enough to know that you're going to be okay.
Oh yeah,
So
you
when you
have to know
know
you're
you're
going to be
okay,
okay.
right? So if you get into another relationship, you're not going to stay in it for the wrong reasons. Most of us stay because we're afraid to be alone.
Yes.
Truly, that's what we're afraid of. But when you realize you can be alone and you're okay, so when you do find a relationship, you are going to be more discerning,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to choose the wrong person anymore because you know how to be alone. And so that's really the gift of being alone. Also finding yourself, right? You can't. I mean, it's hard to do it when you're with someone.
Right.
Like
You
at
also
that, the big deep work.
right, and you've also know what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. You
Right.
get really clear on that. And
Right.
I think I think there's a really strong belief, especially for women, that it's almost like we make excuses because
Mhm.
we believe this is the best I'm gonna find. This is
Ooh,
this is the best.
right.
This is the best I'm gonna
Oh, I
get.
hear that all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was kind of embedded in me, but not from intimate
Oh
relationships.
no, I had that too though. Yeah.
Yeah, that was more from just familial society, just
Mhm.
friendships. You hear them hold on to that belief, and you're like, well, that must be true for me, right? And it's like, no, there was always
Mhm.
a part of me that felt like, no, you know what? Even if I'm alone, I'd rather not hold on to that belief, I'd rather
Yes.
not hold on to that belief and be alone and be okay with that than
Yeah.
be in something and believe, well, you know what, this is it. This is because he's checking off all the boxes.
Right.
Somebody has to
Right.
fit this certain criteria, but that doesn't mean it necessarily feels right.
Well, and I think part of the problem is too is there aren't very many relationships that for us to look up to.
Yeah.
I did. So what I did is I read lots of books on soulmate love. Like Gay Hendricks and his wife have written stuff. Like I've read. I don't know. I've read so many books. Actually, I have one sitting back here. Love will find you. Like I was like absolutely obsessed with learning about good relationships because mine was so not good that I had to find a way to imagine it because I never saw a good
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had people come to me and my relationship and say, you guys really need to share your relationship because we just, not many of us know that this exists. And so I'm actually starting to do soulmate workshops because I do believe that so many people just need to know that this is possible,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And to know that this is a good relationship, what it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
right? With me reading all these books, I just read story after story after story. I refuse to listen to people, Denise, because it's all everywhere. But no wonder we struggle because A,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what a good relationship looks like, and B, we keep hearing all the negativity,
Yeah.
and it's chronic,
It's chronic.
you know.
It's chronic. It sure is.
Mhm.
That's why you have to be so clear with yourself.
Right.
It's
Yes.
like what is it that
Yes.
what is right for me? And we're always so concerned with what's right for everyone else, and
Mhm.
it can really screw with us. Could
Yeah.
really take us down. It's taken me down
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh no, I get it. I mean, I've had moments of like just pure sadness because I thought there was lots of points I thought, I'll just be single forever and I'm just gonna have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
And at times I was really okay with it. I just was super happy. I was focusing on my business and I wrote a book and I was in my joy, but I also had the belief, you and I've talked about this, that I couldn't have my business and a relationship. I couldn't have both.
Oh yeah.
And so that's something, if you don't mind me touching up on, because one thing I found, I read about soulmate relationships, but I also seen in my own, and like you were saying that, okay, you're ready for something, because there's a part of us that growth that does happen with someone else that really lifts you to a level you never could really get to on your own.
Yeah.
I do believe that. At least that's been the truth for me. Because he offers, like, I would not have been as courageous to become a full-time entrepreneur if he wasn't already doing it, and very courageously. And he's so, just watching his journey, but he believes in me so much too. So with his belief in me and his support, and, like, could I have done this without him?
Yeah.
Maybe, but having him is 1,000 times better.
Well,
because he's helped me.
Yeah, it should feel that way.
Right.
It's so funny you said that. I heard this quote, I think it was just last night. A relationship doesn't complete you, it expands you.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so it shouldn't make you feel whole. It should just expand you more than you already are.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
again, most of us go to relationships because we're missing something.
Right.
So we go to a relationship and we say, okay, I don't have this, so I'm going to project it onto you, or I'm going to take it from you. And we cannot rely on other people to be happy. We just can't. Right. Because we're all fallible. We're human. And so a soulmate relationship, because you both do your work, and then you come together, and then you lift each other. But you're not taking from each other, ever.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to do that. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So this is good. I love this. I love this conversation. We can talk about this all day.
Forever. I know we started on vulnerability, but but the
relationship's a part of that.
Yeah, it is. And the one thing that I will be vulnerable about is the fact that being single at first made me feel shame, and I didn't even know I was feeling it. I just thought okay, so this is really important. When a feeling is so familiar, and this is why I think emotional intelligence, like really getting in touch with our emotions, is so important, because if we're not, then how do you know when something's wrong? If you're not really in touch with your feelings, because we're so used to repressing them, how do you know when something is wrong or it feels off? It's not necessarily wrong, but it's not in alignment with your truth, right? Right. So for the longest time, as I was going through the process of kind of going inward and understanding myself better and all these beliefs that I were holding on to and then trying to let them go, and I was still holding on to the shame of being alone. And I couldn't even grasp this idea that it was shame, because I was so used to the feeling, because we live in this society where it's like you're not connected to a partner, whether people say it or not. It's an underlying resonance that we all carry, that there's something must be wrong with you.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And when I really got that feeling was attached, because I was always holding on to this kind of low vibrational yucky feeling and I couldn't understand why. Like I was healing and I was feeling really good about myself. I just felt like more in alignment than ever, but I was still holding on to this piece that I couldn't quite figure out. And it was just this attachment to the idea of being alone, that it was wrong. And so I think it's really important to point out that it's actually one of the smartest things that you can do, for a period of time that you personally need it.
Yes.
And when I really became okay with that, because I was projecting out once again, like what other people thought, what must other people be thinking. And it wasn't until I got really clear with myself that, wait, you just need to be okay with that. You don't need anybody else to approve or disapprove. Or I was like, a light bulb just went off for me. But it took being really vulnerable with myself to go, oh shit, I'm still feeling that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I struggled with that too, because I really felt like there was something really wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was too loving. I think that was my tape, which is crazy to
So
say that.
interest. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, because I'm such a giver. Like, I'm obsessed with giving. Like, my ex-husband and I always joke, like, our relationship was like, like the Japanese style, like the man in the front and I'm walking behind,
Mm.
just doing whatever he wanted. And I loved it because I'm like, oh, I can give to him and he'll ignore me. That's kind of I understand why I chose someone like him. But I just, so when I go on dates, like, I'm so attentive and I'm just so loving, and they're like freaking out, like, oh, this chick's way too. And
Yeah.
so I started thinking, oh gosh, am I too loving? And like, even online dating, I changed my profile like 20 times. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should sound like this, or maybe I should sound like that. Oh, maybe I'm too forward, or maybe I'm not forward enough. And like, oh my gosh, it was a total mental tripping. Like, I hated it.
That's so funny. I feel like we
um,
were just the
but
opposite. Like you were like this open, and I was like completely shut off. It's funny.
but I thought men like that. I had this tape that, like, because I'd see these patients in the hospital and these young girls who were completely, she's not age, total bitches. And they had these boyfriends that kind of, do whatever, yes, dear, whatever you want, dear. And like, oh, and I was just like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm just too nice.
Mm.
Maybe I need to be a bitch. I even got the book, Why Men Love Bitches. I'm telling you, I thought I needed to be meaner. And, but I'm like, I can't be anything but me because I've been practicing vulnerability for so long with my friends. So when I dated, I would just be me. But I think a lot of men I dated weren't ready for me. Because, if they don't think about it, if, you don't love yourself and you have someone who's coming out and loving you, they're like, ooh, I don't like that. I've had friends who I'm like, because I'd say, oh, I love you. And they wouldn't say it back because they
Yeah.
didn't love themselves. But
Mm.
yeah, I felt like there's something really wrong with me. And I'd have friends, especially right after my divorce, and they'd meet men and they'd get in relationships. These men would fall madly in love with them, and no one would fall in love with me. And I thought, oh my God, there's something really, really wrong with me. So yeah, it's hard. Society, everything's coupled up and everything's, like holidays, it's families, and being a divorced single mom, like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have a family. There's something wrong with me. I messed up.
So when was it
It
for
was,
you? When did you get to that point, or did you? Do you remember the point where you felt like, wow, I'm really okay with this? Like, was
yeah,
that?
that was probably, so I was single 6.5 years, probably at 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is great. I was very, like I said, I was very focused on my business. I was also still working in nursing full time. So I was doing both. So then I had that tape, like, I don't have time for both.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm not going to date because I have enough on my plate. And then something shifted in me. And I was like, maybe I do want to date. And then pretty quickly I met my soulmate. So it is a matter of being open too. But, I'm just very, very grateful that I had that time to deal with that pain and deal with that sadness. And I remember just dropping my kids off at his friend's house just so I can go in my basement and scream and yell and cry, because I was so mad. And I don't
And I
want
just
to
want to
say
point.
we need somebody, but that's my heart needed somebody.
Yeah, yeah, but I want to point out that there's nothing wrong with that either. Like,
Right.
those are emotions that frustration and anger
Right.
is, we put such an emphasis on, trying to focus on the positive and staying in that energy, or else we're not going to attract, right? And it's such
Right. I know.
BS. It's such BS because it's, if it's in us, it needs to come out of us.
Right.
And if we're so busy trying to put on these masks and be perfect and show the world that we have these perfect lives and this perfect image,
Mm-hmm.
we are going to suffer so much more.
And I think that's why I've been posting so many videos on my vulnerability, because
Which I
for
love.
one, thank you, but for one, I really want to, like, it's almost, and I've been recently read a book, says, what's it called, by Mel Robbins. She did the 5 second rule, but I'm reading her other book, Stop, what is it, Stop Pretending Already? But what she talks about, stop saying you're fine. I love that, because the reason why so many of us don't grow is because we go, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so I just want to get out in the world that we're all vulnerable, and to know we are all going through struggles. And if I'm willing to share my struggle, then maybe I'll encourage someone else to share their struggle.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And Facebook has this thing where everybody thinks everybody else's life is better than yours. right?
It's
Like
so
we're
true.
always like, and I've been guilty of that. I'll look at them like, oh God, like
It's so
everybody
true. It's like,
feels
what did I
happy.
hear the other day? It's the highlight reel. It's just the highlight reel of our lives. But people connect through vulnerability.
Yeah,
That's real connection, you know? And so I just really thought this conversation was important because it needs to be talked about.
yeah.
It needs to be talked about. It
Well,
is
and for us to inspire other people to be vulnerable too, right?
Yeah, it has to be an open conversation because, you know, I really think people go venture out into the healing world to, again, like I said, try to make something better or fix themselves when in
Mm.
reality they're just not paying attention to what's really needs attending to.
And that's what, as a soul coach, and that's what I learned. This is how I found myself too, besides meditation, is my soul coaching. And it's because it was just taking away the layers of the untruths. And then you come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come back to you, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm
Right.
pretty darn awesome. I
Yes.
had no idea I was already there.
Yeah.
You're already there.
Exactly. And so it's not, it's your relationship that's wonderful, but you're only able to have that relationship now because you have this you have a real, genuine connection at a real vulnerable level.
Right,
So it feels authentic to you.
right,
Whereas
right.
opposed in the
Yeah.
past, we were compensating for something. Like
Yeah.
you were trying to fill something within you by being just the giver, right? Like
Hmm.
that filled you up, but you weren't receiving. In my case, I was so disconnected that I couldn't even give. So when you can't give, I couldn't receive either. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really so when you come back to self and you really connect with all parts of yourself, then you can meet at a level where you're nourished in a healthy way and
Hmm.
you're not feeding off of the person.
And I always tell, my partner, I said, as much as I love being with him and he brings me so much joy, my true joy comes from me. My true joy comes from spirit. And luckily we
Amen.
both believe this. So I am like, it's not his responsibility to make me happy.
Oh,
It's
yes.
mine.
That's a big one.
And because that's a lot of pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, my absolute go-to is God, is spirit, because that's always there, and sometimes he can't be there emotionally or physically, right? So and that's not healthy to put. It's just a lot of pressure
Totally.
to expect someone as a human being to take that all on. And
Yeah.
so really a soulmate relationship is just, you always hold that space and love them unconditionally, but just, and he trusts that everything I go through is what I need to go through, because he's done so much work. When I go through hard times, he doesn't freak out.
Yeah.
He does, he of course he worries in the sense he doesn't like to see me sad, but he knows I'll get through it because he believes in me
Mm-hmm.
and I believe in him.
I love
So
that. Love that.
yeah, yeah. I can't wait to meet your soulmate. It's happening.
It's happening. It's happening.
He's a comet, and he will be so lucky to have you. Another
Aw.
thing that shifted me, one more thing, I know I can talk about this forever, but one thing that shifted me when I worked with the coach, and because I was really resistant to relationships at that point, because I was in my happy place with my business and everything. And she said, well, what could you give him? Because I'm a giver, right? I'm like, oh, what could I give him? Okay, that feels kind of good.
Mm.
And I realized that's the blessing is not only what he gives to me, what I give to him. And
Yeah.
that's actually my truest joy, is what I can give to him. It makes me so happy. Like, oh,
Mm.
what else can I do for him? Like, I love it. I just love unconditionally giving. It's so beautiful for someone to receive it so
It's
openly.
beautiful.
And so for you, just to be open to receive, like, what a gift you're going to give
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's a very new, when I say new, you know, in my 40 years on earth, it's new in the last few years to have that feeling of receiving because I was always so concerned with how others felt, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very disconnected from, well, you know, how do I feel, and then how could I, and what makes me feel good? Like that was a big thing for me. How could I receive in a way that feels good for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was disconnected from worthiness and my value. So like to have,
Mm-hmm.
I felt value came from just giving, right? Like
Right. Oh, I know, right?
if I give, then I'm valuable, right?
Yes.
But I never once checked in to see, well, what do I need?
I know.
What do I
I know.
truly need? And I don't
Yeah.
think we really know what we need until we do the inner work.
Right. And
I believe that we think we know what we need because
mhm.
we want the band-aids, we want to fix the feelings that we don't want to feel. So we
Mhm.
think, does this make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining it the
Mhm.
right way.
Oh, absolutely. Mhm.
But when we do the inner work, we start to really feel like our authentic needs, like
Mhm.
what really like touches us internally, as
Yeah.
opposed to like what's going to keep us from looking at what we really need to look at. So oftentimes we use a partner as a distraction. Yeah.
Well, one other thing my mom said recently, she said a lot of women, and I did this for years. I would go after men and I would hope they liked me. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, does he like me? Does he like me? I don't know. Does he like me? And it's like, it's not how it should be. It should be like, who do I like?
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh, yeah, I guess so that's why I started writing the list and getting really clear and visualize what I wanted.
Yeah. But ultimately,
I
what does it come down to? We can make the list and everything, right? But what is it really? I want to see what you think about that. What does it really come down to?
What it really comes down to is how someone makes you feel.
Yes.
It's not really
Totally.
the only thing on the list that was really clear was blue eyes. I'm obsessed with blue eyes, and my boyfriend has amazing, beautiful blue eyes. But beyond that, it was the feeling that I wanted to get with him was what manifested, and it's even better than I mean, way better than I imagined. Um, but one thing I have to say too is the great thing about dating, and I don't want people to shy away from dating because you learn so much about yourself. But
Oh,
what I
totally.
started doing is like the Frankenstein man. So I would take every date, and I actually wrote it down once, all the guys I dated, and I wrote down one thing I liked about him. Like, oh, I liked, how attentive he was. I'm like, this guy, oh, I loved how he opened doors for me. Oh, I loved how, he sang. Or I loved about that he was a good cook or whatever, and I
Mm-hmm.
would take pieces because again, when you don't know what your soulmate's going to be like,
Yeah.
you can take the dating and say, well, I like this and I like this and this and this. And so when my soulmate came into my life, like he fit all that and then some, like
Mm-hmm.
times 10. But at that point, I was one thing that I practiced a lot, really recognize how it feels to receive because I
Yeah.
wasn't used to receiving.
Right.
And again, I think that we talked about this before. Like, my son puts my seatbelt on for me every time I get in the car. Like, I don't open a single door. Even if he's a mile away, he'll make me wait till I get, and it's a respect thing that I never had.
Yeah. And what's
So
the
it's
most important thing is that that's comfortable for you.
right.
That's what
That's for
feels
me.
good for you.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I practiced that with my guy friends beforehand. I had some guy friends and they were gentlemen. I'm like, oh, okay. This is what it's like to be respected. For
Mm.
me, because I lacked respect in my last relationship. So,
And that's a really great tool.
yeah.
Get used to a feeling before the actual whatever it is we're trying to manifest comes into fruition.
Right.
You need to have the feeling first. Like that's a people.
Yeah.
It's not all your thinking. It's really what it comes down to is your thinking's attached to your emotions, right?
Right.
So
Right.
the vibration happens in the emotional body.
It is. It's not the physical attributes because people think, oh, he has to look a certain way or he or she has to look a certain way. It's really not. It's energy.
Yep.
It's that energetic connection. And
Totally.
when my soulmate, because he came to my meetup and we weren't friends at the time, we were friends. But I remember I had a guest speaker, and I sat there like looking at the audience. There's a lot of people there. And I kept staring at him. Like I could not stop staring at him. It was so weird. I even told him after, I'm like, I just couldn't stop staring at you because I'm an overshare. And he just, I met him when his ex-girlfriend brought him to my group. So they were broken up. But the point is, I was like, well, that's interesting. Why am I staring at him? So,
Yeah.
we may not know right away, but our soul knows,
Totally.
So that's kind of the main thing.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Oh yeah, I don't want to, like, to me, I want people to know what's out there, what is available to them,
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
and to never stop believing,
Yeah.
ever, ever, ever.
Yeah. And for me, I want people to know that it's okay to be alone. So
And it's important to be alone.
it's important to be alone.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because even when I dated, I was like, found out a guy, he's like only single for a couple months. I'm like, no, this isn't gonna work. You need time to be with you. So important.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can spot it. You can, right? You can
Yes.
spot it so quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing great work. I'm so glad we both are out there doing this work because so many
Me too.
people
Me too.
need this. I wish
Yes.
I had this more when I was single, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a game changer. It's a game
Yeah.
changer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else? Any last bits that
No.
you want to share? You good?
No, I think we're
You
good.
let it
This
all
is a
out.
good conversation.
It was great. It was so good.
Yay.
So good.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it again.